Today's program will cover the context for the KIP call, an overview of the program, including the scope of the call and what can qualify for funding, also eligibility, how to apply and the application process, the selection process, and finally, as mentioned, we end the session with a Q&A. But let's get started. Initially, I just want to mention that due to the current lack of government in Denmark, the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs is not participating in this meeting. However, it's important to mention that the KIP was launched by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Higher Education and Science in 2025, and that the program is a main initiative under the Danish government strategy for strengthened engagement with Africa, framed in the Africa Century strategy from 2024, as well as being in support of Denmark's overall strategy for development cooperation, in which educational development is highlighted as fundamental for sustainable growth. KIP's purpose is closely aligned with these strategies in strengthening partnerships and cooperation between Denmark and African countries, focusing on higher education at the institutional level, as well as through exchange programs. The DFC works to improve and promote educational development and learning initiatives supported by the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But again, before handing over to Charlotte, I just want to mention again that the questions can be asked in the chat, and that we also encourage you to visit our website, where you can find much more detailed information about the program and the call itself. A link to our website will be posted in the end in the chat after today's meeting is finished. But for now, over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. My name is Charlotte. I'm one of the program advisors in the KIP program. I will let you know a little bit about the Knowledge and Innovation Program and the scope of the call and the qualifying areas for funding. In general, what can be funded. But first of all, the program has two overall objectives, one overall objective, one specific objective. And what we are trying to do is achieve mutual understanding and better dialogue between African and Danish decision makers across different stands of society on the joint responses to the global challenges that we are all facing. And secondly, we want to do this through collaborative learning and innovation for Africa and Danish universities, where they create joint networks and skills development for Danish and African students, so that they in future can address the shared global challenges. So this is overall a university partnership where individual scholarships are not possible. It is about institutional learning and development between university partners. Ida? If we move on to the main outcomes of the project, there are two overall outcomes, one on partnership and collaborative learning innovation, and one on knowledge and skills development. In the first outcome, we are focusing very much on the long-term collaborative partnerships between Danish and African universities. Their focus here is on knowledge development and innovation relevant to the shared global challenges. This is very focused on the institutional partnership. The second outcome, focusing on young African students who are able to be part of scholarship programs and have shared experiences and perspective with Danish students, will gain skills and competencies relevant to address these shared global challenges. So under outcome one, we have the institutional partnership cooperation, and under outcome two, we have the opportunity of student exchange between the partners in the project. And it is very important here to say that there needs to be a clear correlation between the two outcomes. They work together towards the same two objectives that we've just mentioned before. So basically, it's a two-leg project that we want to see in this program. And I think if we move towards the budget of the program so far, overall, we have been granted 430 million DKK for the period of the entire program, which ends in June 2032. So far, we've had one round of calls, which was in 2025, where we had the distribution of 173 million DKK, which is about 40% of the total grant. This year's 2026 call is the second round for a call for applications, and there's one more round planned in 2027. After this, there will be no more calls. It will be project implementation until the end of the program in 2032. If we dive a little bit more into the program and the modalities of the program, you will see, as I mentioned, that we have the partnership programs here as our modality number 1. Here we have to see partnerships between a Danish university and an African university as a minimum. We can have up to 4 partners, primary partners in a project, and there can also be secondary partners. But there can be no more than 4 primary partners. But there must be 1 Danish and 1 African university involved. And it must apply for activities under both outcome 1 and outcome 2, except if you already have an ongoing partnership that lies very closely to the outcome 1 priorities of the partnership, then it is possible to apply for a scholarship alone. But the project you have already needs to live up to the same conditions as it would have done under an outcome 1 in our modalities, and therefore there still needs to be a close interrelation between the 2 legs on the institutional partnership and the exchange. The second option we have is if you are in a process of developing new partnerships, then you will have the opportunity to apply for seed funding to establish new partnerships. Here the objective is to be able to apply for a partnership program in the next call, and that also means that the 2026 call is the last opportunity for seed funding, as there's only 1 call remaining after this next year. Additional to this, we have some opportunities to link to other grants related to the EU. We have top-up grants to those who have an Erasmus Plus program. We have seed funding for those who want to prepare an international credit mobility agreement. And we have seed funding for preparation of applications to the EU's capacity building on higher education program. These can also be applied for through our platforms. And I think that's overall on the modalities, but what we are focusing a lot on in this project is the partnerships. So in terms of the partnerships, like I just said before, we have to have African and Danish institutions, and they must have an equitable role in the agenda setting and the governance of the partnerships. So one of the things that is very key in this program is that the universities who are primary partners work very closely together to develop this. And it needs to be clear to see that all partners are involved in the design, in the governance, and in the results of the project, so that it's not only for African universities or Danish universities. It has to be something that is shared priorities between the partners involved. In terms of the activities and the outputs from each of the projects, go back. Each project will be defined by the partners. The design is as a cooperation between the partners on shared topical interests, and it has to be linked to education. You cannot put research activities into this, but of course, if you have a research area that you are working on and you want to create more educational patterns around this or curriculum or anything like that, it can be included. But research activities on its own cannot be funded, but you can apply for funds under other MFA-funded development research programs. We also have one research program under the DFC that you can apply for. But for this KIP Knowledge Innovation Program, it is focused on education and not on research. And that also means that PhD students cannot be included. In terms of the examples of the activities under the program related to outcome 1 on the partnership, we don't have set sort of things that you have to do. There are no thematic constraints, but the project needs to address clearly defined global shared challenges that are relevant to all involved universities. In terms of this, it can be in terms of like creating platforms, summer schools, workshops, seminars. You can also in this project work with your administrative staff. You can have staff exchanges. You can have visiting scholars, both to and from Denmark and African countries. It's possible to do joint master's degrees or curriculum development, research methods, writing courses, blended learning activities, etc. There are lots of options, and there are no thematic boundaries, like I said, but you have to clearly define what the challenges are that you want to address with this. In terms of seed funding, it's possible to include startup activities in terms of building a partnership and then apply for a partnership project later on. If we look at the examples for the scholarships in terms of what you are able to do, there are opportunities to apply for scholarships for English language 2-year full degree master's programs in Denmark. It's also possible to have scholarships for full degrees combined master's program where you develop a joint master's between the Danish and the African universities. It's also possible to have scholarships for 3 months, 5 months, or 12 months study stays in Denmark, or even do summer schools. So there's a variety of opportunities in terms of applying for scholarships, or including scholarships in your projects. Yes, and I think that's all I want to say in terms of the overall program and the framing of it. And then we will dive a little bit more into who can apply and how eligibility criteria, etc., are there.
My name is Hristina, and I'm a program administrator in DFC. And I will be covering the eligibility and the application process. But before we move to who, how, and when to apply, so let's just have a quick overview of these modalities that Charlotte already presented. Just to have a quick review of them, and also just to highlight some key points here. For partnerships, what is very important to stress out here is that the partnership project, that the applications need to cover both outcomes, both outcome 1 and both outcome 2. And of course, there is this possibility to apply for scholarships alone, but what is important here is that in order for you to apply only for outcome 2, the scholarships part, it needs to be existing partnership in place, and you have to have ongoing activities that are related to the program outcomes. And this also needs to be well described in the related documents. So let's have a look at who is eligible to apply. So university in the Kingdom of Denmark and African university in the countries with a Danish embassy. These will be the primary partners, and they have to design and they have to be full and equitably involved in the project and in the application. It needs also to be very well described in the application. Secondary partners can also be involved in the project, and it can be also universities and partners from African countries or private sector actors and relevant higher education. The secondary partners, of course, they will be included with a limited budget, but this we can cover a little bit later. So about the Erasmus plus modality, you can switch just to show who can apply for the Erasmus plus. Yes, these are higher educational institutions who are eligible to apply for these 3 last modalities of the KIP program. I will not go in depth with this. However, what is important to stress out here is that the Erasmus Plus top-up grant can be applied by those who have already a COA 171 grant, and they can apply for the top-up stipends for the incoming students from Africa. Those holding an Erasmus Plus charter for higher education can apply for the other two modalities. So what can be funded under the partnership projects? It will be partnership activities. It is also including the exchange of staff, and it is up to 3 million per primary partner. Maybe also important to mention here is that the overhead is not included, is included in the 3 million per primary partner, because we got this question quite a lot. So it is not on top of the 3 millions. Also, activities performed by secondary partner institutions can be funded up to 15% of the primary partner budget and the total budget. And this is not included with the scholarships. So the 15% total budget is excluding scholarships budget. Equipment at African University. This is 10% of the budget, and also preparation of research proposals. Scholarships for African students from countries with a Danish embassy who will study in Denmark. And this is up to 25 millions per partnership project. And here there is no overhead. So let's have a look at what cannot be funded under the partnership project. Research activities cannot be funded. Equipment at Danish universities. Scholarships for Danish students studying in Africa. Also for-profit secondary partners, as well as European university outside Denmark, who can participate as secondary partners. So when to apply? The call is already launched, as you already know, and the deadline for the applications is the 15th of September. The project start date must be before 1st of April. Important thing to mention here is that the project activities can first start when DFC has sent a written confirmation of a received and signed letter of grant for the project. And this must happen, of course, before 1st of April. But this is very important to notice here. For the Erasmus Plus modality, there is no deadline as such. The applications are ongoing. This is something that you can go on our website and find and apply on an ongoing basis. The way you apply for the partnership and seed project, yeah, of course, identify your partners, because to apply for these modalities, you have to have a partnership or you know your partners, and you have to develop your application accordingly and together. Study the call text. A lot of things and you have been included in the call text, important, but also visit our website. We have gathered some very important questions there that you can go in and see under the frequently asked questions section. Some of them might not appear in the call text, but it's a really good place to visit on the website. And then create account in the application system, which is SurveyMonkey Apply. And also you invite collaborators there too. Important to mention, please set time aside for endorsement. Endorsement for partnership projects must to be done by rectorate or vice chancellor of the involved institutions, and it might be it might require time to do so. So make sure that you have good time for that too. Erasmus as well, we don't have a call document for the Erasmus Plus track, but on our website we have described everything that you need to know and apply. And you also apply on the SurveyMonkey apply system for the Erasmus Plus modalities. You need, of course, the documentation that is also described that is needed, and of course, as well, set aside some time for endorsement. So when you log in SurveyMonkey Apply, you will be able to see all the programs that are eligible, and you can make more than one application. It's possible to create multiple applications within the program. And make sure to invite collaborators and contribute who can contribute to your application directly in the system. Endorsements, they need to be requested once you have filled in the most of the details of your project. This is the last thing that you should do, is gather the endorsements. And the system doesn't allow you to do so unless everything before is done. For the Erasmus Plus applications, once you start your application, you see what is needed in terms of endorsement. But this is something that is well described in the system too. So that's like shortly about who can apply and how you can apply for the KIP projects modalities.
Thank you very much, Hristina, and thank you to all who have already entered questions into the chat. Feel free to enter even more. But now I'm pleased to hand over to Nils Boesen, Chair of the Selection Committee.
Thank you very much, and hi everybody. I'm chair of the Selection Committee. We had the first round last year, so we practiced in a certain way, and it has been modified this year, partly to ensure even higher quality in our assessment and partly to take a little bit of burden off our shoulders, because we got a lot of exciting applications last year, and it was really hard work to come through them in a satisfactory way. Let me first say that we are 7 in the committee now. You only see 6 pictures because that was last year's version. 2 of the participants are observers, namely the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Denmark and the Ministry of Higher Education. It's actually not called the ministry, it's called the Department, I think, for Higher Education. And they are observers. Now, our job is to decide on which applications should receive funding and which should not, both for full partnership applications and for seed funding applications. Once we have decided, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will endorse the decision, but they're also sitting in the committee as observers, and of course they have the right to speak there, so we have a discussion. So we do not envisage that the ministry would not endorse our decision. The experience of the selection committee includes 3 good colleagues from universities, 2 from African universities and 1 from Roskilde University in Denmark. My background is more in development assistance and a lot of involvement in support to capacity development in higher education, among others in the Danish, what was it called, the program, the university, Building Stronger Universities program that is actually still running. I think it started some 10, 15 years ago. Now, next slide, please. The selection process. First of all, there are an eligibility check by DFC. And unfortunately, last year, a couple of applications were rejected, as I recall it, simply because they are not had the endorsement by the Vice Chancellor or the Rectorate. So if that should happen to you, forget it, you're out. And there are a few others formalities, which I think Hristina has gone through, and you'll find them in the material. Now, be careful about the formalities because there are no mercy there. If formalities are not met, you will not be assessed on quality, etc. The next step is then the new thing for this year. We will have external consultants going through the applications, making a summary and observing strengths and weaknesses as they find it on these applications. After that, it moves to us as a selection committee. And it's important to underline that whatever happens before it comes to us and actually to our meeting is only inputs. So the final decision is based on our assessment after a verbal or oral argument, if you will, and that is decisive. So even if we have a formal system, and I'll go through the details of this in a moment, it is the final oral discussion in the committee that will decide which applications will receive funding and which will not. I think we should have the next slide, please. So the assessment criteria, and this is again new. We had criteria last year also, the same criteria actually: relevance, quality, effect and value added, efficiency and value for money, risk and equity. And many of you will recognize that these are kind of standard criteria in many funding schemes and application processes. But this year we have put on weights because we experienced last year that the score was not so useful for our discussion. And again, remember, it's only an input to the discussion. Nobody will get funding just because they receive a high score. Some may not enter into the discussion because they receive a very low score, but eventually it is the oral argument in the committee that is deciding. Now, what we have done this year is then design a weighing system where the first three criteria, relevance, quality, and effect and value added, are counting a bit more, namely 12 out of 60% of 60 points each, or 20%, while the last three criteria, management structure, context and mitigation, or risk management and equity, receives a slightly lower weight, namely 13.3%, or 8 points out of the 60 points you can score. The reason for this is actually not so much that management or efficiency, risk, and equity is not as important as the rest of them, but it's actually that it's somehow, I wouldn't say easier because that's the wrong word, but there are some standard texts that we could see are kind of repeating themselves in these three last sections, which means it's actually more difficult to really discern the details of how is this going to be managed. It's very, so to speak, easy to write up a good setup, but it's difficult to read it and really know, will this work or will it not work? So that's one thing. And then again, last year, I would also say that we found a few, or some of the applications were not very precise on relevance. So it was more generic formulations about why this was good and not specific enough in terms of actual impact, outcomes, and outputs. which again also are reflected in the quality criteria. So this year, this is what we'll do. We will score them. We will take this scoring from all of us. It's a system of first readers, second readers, etc. But we will score them, and that will enter into the discussion where we will decide over, is it 1 day or 2 days? 2 days? 2 days, yes. We'll take 2 days, and we'll be very tired on the second day when we come out and smoke comes up the chimney and the money are distributed.
Thank you very much, Nils. And now I will hand over to Ida to facilitate the Q&A session.
Thank you so much. I think I will just stop sharing my screen, because now we will continue to look through the questions that you've posed throughout the presentations, and I will then pose the questions to the presenters. Just up front, we may not get through all of your questions, and we will try to select those who are either quite repetitive, we see a lot of people asking the same things, or things that we feel might be of general broad interest to those listening. So if you feel like your question has not been responded to or sufficiently responded to during this Q&A, you can always contact us via email at kip@dfcenter.dk, and we will be happy to also respond to any questions you might have that may be a bit more specific than what we will bring out here. There are quite a few different topics and themes in your questions, and I'll try to kind of mix it around a little bit depending on who they are posed for. But one thing is that the timing of these grants and the timing of the application rounds, maybe Charlotte, you can help us clarify a little bit. There is a question that says, since the final call for partnership grants is in 2027, and the grants for the current call will be awarded in 2027, when will the beneficiaries of seed funding to establish new partnerships for this round be able to put in an actual partnership application?
Yes, thank you for that. I'll try to make it as logical as I can. It is true that the grants this year are sort of awarded or paid out in 2027. This is due to the fact that we have a deadline for applications in 2026 of the 15th of September, like Hristina was saying. And that means before all the applications are processed, gone through the selection committee, etc., and we have the projects who are awarded a grant and those who are not, we are coming close to the end of the year, and therefore we know that we won't be able to make the project start before the close of the year. And therefore the project start date is in 2027. But the grant year and the money is coming from 2026. So that also means that if you don't put in your application in 2026, September 15, you only have one round left to put in your application, which is 2027. We don't know the application date yet, but we are expecting that it's not that different from what we have had in the 2 past years, this year and last year. So in that sense, we have 2 calls of applications for applications left, the one we are currently in and the one next year. So if you apply for seed funding this year in 2026, you are expected to put in your partnership application in 2027. I hope that sort of explains that the call process is within 1 year, but we don't expect the projects to be able to start up so quickly within the same year. So therefore the project startup is the following year. And within the first quarter.
Thank you so much. And to sum up, there will be another application round in 2027 again, which will be the last one. And Charlotte, just to stay with you for a little bit, because there is another question related to the starting dates of projects, is concerning the start date and specific project start date
which is determined by the Danida Fellowship Center, in the sense that Danida Fellowship Center must send a receipt of having received the signed grant agreement. If the applicant decides that the project should start on March 1st, can DFC still determine a different start date within the first quarter of 2027, earlier than March 1st, for instance?
It's not DFC who puts the start date into the project. What we've said is that we expect you to be able to plan starting the project within the first quarter of the coming year. This is based on last year, where we had set a default date of 1st January, but it's not in any way realistic that anybody has the projects up and running by January. And therefore, we've now said, for planning purposes, that you don't have to start the date so soon. You can wait until within the first quarter. The challenge with the letter of grant is that what we've seen historically is that once the project is approved, we can see that most projects have had to make changes and adaptations to the project. Once we've gone through the budgets, there's been some issues. Once we've gone through the log frames, the results frames, the Gantt charts, there have been some processes that haven't been completely agreed within the universities necessary, or the budgets, or something has come up. And therefore, the process of adjusting the project to fit within the general conditions, or even within the university's own regulations, have delayed. So it's for this reason that we're saying, yes, you plan your start date, but the actual start date of the project cannot be earlier than the signature of the letter of grant. And the letter of grant has to be signed by the rectorate or the vice chancellor, as well as the project coordinator, and as from DFC. And it's only when DFC can then say, yes, we have received your signed letter of grant, that you can have the start date. So we won't force an earlier start date. We're just saying, until we have the signed letter of grant on an approved project, we are not able to have the start date of the project. So you can't start earlier than the signature. And I think for this, it's also important to say that it's a very good idea, like Hristina was saying, that when you're developing your application, make sure that you have a good cooperation between your faculties and your administrative processes, because we have seen that some of the issues on scholarships, there's been some new knowledge developed through the process of getting this settled and started up that wasn't already clear to everybody from the beginning. So we really would encourage that you make sure that anyone involved in this project, anyone who has a role, takes part in the design, because it will make it easier to adjust the projects afterwards.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Hristina, I see a few questions related to eligibility, and one of them is regarding seed funding. So the first question is, what is the criteria to apply for a seed grant?
Well, the criteria for applying for seed grants are more or less the same. The difference is that the reason you will apply for seed funding is because you do not have established partnership yet. And you maybe don't know your partners that well, and you would like to establish a partnership that you can use afterwards, and together put an application for a partnership project. So this is still Danish universities with Danish and African universities with a Danish embassy. That can apply, but the purpose is different. So you use the seed funding in order for you to prepare for a partnership application.
Thank you so much. And another question related to the seed funding issue is this one: can a new private business apply for the seed grant as a secondary partner?
It is still you have to have the status, if I can say that, of a primary partner in order to apply. but you can of course be included as a secondary partner in this application. And each secondary partner there must be a purpose of contribution to the project, both the seed funding, but also afterwards. You have to agree with the partners what your contribution will be. So it is still the Danish university that is applying. You cannot, as a private institution, put an application.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. And also related to this issue of secondary partners is a question which is, does the purchase of equipment using max 10% of the budget also apply to secondary partners?
Secondary partners, they can cover some salaries compensations, and travel expenses.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, equipment cannot be covered for any secondary partners in any percentage of the budget.
Can I supplement on that one? Because equipment is only possible for primary partners in Africa. So primary partners in Denmark and secondary partners are not eligible to put in a budget for equipment. It is only primary partners in African universities who are able to put in budget for equipment.
Thank you. So Charlotte, while we're with you, I have another question you might want to respond to, which is, you have indicated that research activities are not funded under the Knowledge and Innovation Program, but at the same time, there is an indication that proposals can be developed within the project. So can you please clarify?
Yes, so we cannot fund anything that has to do with conducting research. Anything that is PhD related has the PhD frame, anything that is in terms of actual research. But what we can fund is if you are creating a partnership, or you have a partnership and you want to work together further, and you want to do like a joint proposal for research funds to another grant, maybe even one with DFC, we can support the hours you spend on developing the proposal within the partnership, but we cannot fund any activity under research. So it's the process of the partnership where the partnership can go together and then apply for other funds that we can support, but not any research activity in terms of implementation or content.
Thank you. And to jump a little bit subject-wise, there is another question which is maybe a little bit more strategic and would have been posed to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs if they had been participating in this meeting. But Charlotte, maybe you will give it a go. What is the overall aim of the scholarship program? Is it to educate masters who get employed and create entrepreneurial activities in Denmark and or in the partner countries?
Yes, of course we cannot answer for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but we do build this program on their program documents. And this clearly sets out that the aim and the purpose of the program is to create a link between Danish and African institutions and a shared knowledge and shared learning, to have the future dialogue between those who have graduated from master classes in a Danish university working with an African university coming from an African university. So the key element is obviously to gain employment, but to address the shared global challenge that the African and the Danish university have identified through the program. So this is not to say that we are moving scholars from one area to another. This is to say we want to have Danish and African universities working together, learning together, developing together, creating solutions together in terms of the global shared challenges that they identify within the program. So it's sort of a future perspective on joint learning and having and creating networks across. And of course we do we have the same laws and regulations as anybody else. So once you are no longer working or studying in Denmark, you are returning to your home countries, and you find employment anywhere. Maybe it's in another global setting. We don't know that, but we want to create the capacities and the networks to work towards the shared global challenges.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. And there are a few follow-up questions actually that maybe I can just pose to you as well. In terms of this requirement for collaboration between partners in order to apply for either seed funding or for a full partnership project. One is related to mainly seed funding maybe, so it's a follow-up question related to being a private business. So as a private business, do I need to build or have a partnership with a Danish institution first? If it's my first time applying, do I need to apply for seed funding first?
Yes, so in terms of this, it's only university partners who can apply for funding. It's primary university partners, and the one who will be the grant holder is a Danish university. So to be part of any project, there needs to be a relationship and a partnership with the Danish university and an African university, to which you are then a secondary partner. You cannot apply for funding as a secondary partner to something that doesn't exist. So there needs to be a Danish primary partner and an African primary partner, to which you are a secondary partner. And here you can be a private business or any other institution that serves a function within the project that is defined within the design of the project and within all the partners. So as a secondary partner, you do need to link to a Danish university and an African university to be able to be part of an application.
Thank you so much. And basically that applies to both seed funding applications and full partnership with scholarship applications, that there needs to be a partnership of some sort in place in order to submit such an application. And another question is also maybe for both seed funding and full applications, but must there be evidence of previous collaborative activities between primary partners before applying for partnership grant, or can institutions who have not worked together previously apply?
One of the criteria or one of the elements in the application is the project description. And a key element in this is the partnership description and the role of the partners and how the partners have experience in working together. It can be that the institutions have worked together before, or the individuals in other situations, or anything that shows that you have a good chance of succeeding in building and establishing the partnership over time. We haven't set particular criteria of you have to have had a partnership for so many years or for this, but you have to show that there is an experience in terms of working together, that there is something to build on, that you have a history of partnering. But there isn't a set sort of frame for this is enough or this isn't enough, but you do have to show in the application how the partnership is established. So this is part of the design of the project.
Thank you very much. Nils, we actually have a question for you as well. And the question is, from your experience from last year, what were the most common flaws or mistakes people made in the applications, and what are lessons learned that institutions should keep in mind when applying? Oh. I'm not sure if Nils has some internet connectivity issues. I think I'll just pose another question to one of the others, and then we'll hope that he comes back on in just a minute and can help us respond to that one. So, Hristina, maybe you can then just respond to a few questions also concerning the eligibility of projects. And the first one, and there are, a few different questions that are asking this in different ways, but that is which countries are eligible to apply for funding?
Well, it's also described in the call. Also on our website, you can find different information, but basically, this is a partnership between, as we said earlier, between a Danish university and an African university in a country with a Danish embassy. Yes, but yes, the full list of the eligible universities you can also find in the countries as well.
Thank you so much. And just a slight add-on to that, because one of the questions were referring to Danish consulates, and we are talking about Danish representation in terms of an embassy or an embassy office within the specific country. But as Hristina also mentioned, you will find the full list of eligible partnering countries in Africa in the call text as well. And Hristina, also another eligibility question is, can TVET or vocational training institutions also apply, or are they eligible?
As a secondary partners, yes. It is still, if you're a private institution and you would like to contribute to a project, a partnership project, maybe you have already been in contact with a Danish partner or not, but this is the way to apply, to be involved as a secondary partner. Still, the Danish university, who will be the grant holding institution, will together with the African university and the secondary partner will develop the application, because this is a common project. It is not a project only of the Danish institution, so everything needs to be, developed and contributed to equitably. But you cannot, as a private institution, apply on your own.
Thank you. And along those lines, another question is, are all Danish universities eligible to be partners? And can we know which universities we can reach out to in order to apply for seed funding?
All Danish universities are eligible, and there is a list of the universities on our website in the frequently asked questions. Also, you can on the website we have a list of the projects that were already approved from the last call. If you would like to see what their projects are about and what they are doing, but DFC does not have a platform or in any other way helping make the connection. This is the responsibility of the institution to get in touch with the different partners, possible partners.
Thank you. And another question more related to the project group, so to speak, or the people participating in the project. Are there any restrictions or requirements regarding the number of staff and their position or seniority in the institutions that are part of an application from institutions, or a partnership application?
Well, if I'm not sure I understand the question, but as I understand it, so people involved in the project, it is up to the institutions to decide according to what the project is about. If the question is about the funding part and what kind of stuff can be funded under the project, so it's basically a very general rule is that the staff involved in must be involved in the activities of the project. So is like admin staff and faculty staff that can cover some expenses. But again, it is the role is important. It needs to be related to a project activity that results in an outcome. I hope this answered the question, if I understood it correctly.
I hope so too. And maybe I can actually use it as a segue over to you, Nils, who I see have joined us again, and actually maybe pose kind of the same question to you in reality, because there's obviously an eligibility criteria in terms of are there any requirements as to the seniority of project participants, whereas the only eligibility requirement we have is, the level of endorsement of the application. But maybe you as SC chair can also elaborate a little bit on how the composition of a project team may then tap into other assessment criteria, such as, the sustainability or other areas of the assessing an application.
Yes, thank you. And sorry for disappearing. I'm sitting in the countryside in Denmark, and you wouldn't imagine how difficult that is in terms of internet coverage. Of staff resources is obviously that they are relevant for the implementation of the project. So it will strongly fall under the efficiency and management aspect. If you add more people that make sense, we'll say, okay, you're out there trying to get funding for something that's not within the scope of the project, and you'll get a low score. And on the other hand, there are some funding mechanisms have specific requirements that it must be an recognized professor or certain senior level that is heading the activities. That is not the case. The kind of partnerships that this program is aiming at are not research partnerships where you need some guru to head the shop. You need endorsement from your higher authorities at the universities, but we would rather see an effective manager running the project than some fine name that would have no time for really, or where it would be strange that person would choose to use his or her time on a project of this sort. So again, we would assess that the relevance of the staff, of course, they are broad. We are not going through details curricula, but we would, of course, make a judgment on the competences and qualifications of the people you put on. But there are no formal requirements as to where they should be in the university hierarchy. And most applications would have a combination of faculty staff and administrative staff, which is fine.
Thank you very much.
I missed answering some previous questions. Please repeat them because I couldn't hear. It was cut.
Definitely, I'll get to that just now. So, but thank you very much for elaborating a little bit on that side of things in terms of the composition of the team, which of course also feasibility of implementing the set projects. And maybe I can also add that you can also go look at the projects that were granted in 2025 and see who were the project coordinators, at least for those projects. So give you an idea of the diversity in terms of who these people are. But the other question, Nils, that you missed out on before, and I would like to repose to you, is this one. From your experience from last year, what were the most common flaws or mistakes in the applications? What are lessons learned that institutions should keep in mind when they apply this year?
I think last year we had two sets of common weaknesses. I wouldn't use the word mistakes. Again, there were a few that didn't have the endorsement from the institute, and I guess they tried to get it in the last minute and then sent the application anyway. They might as well not have done that. But these are the formalities. Now, the first set of weaknesses was actually that it was not very clear why this was a relevant partnership. So the specification of how this would have an impact, and remind yourself that this is not about it's two components. It's about partnerships to address shared global challenges, and these are university partnerships. We hope they will be long-term, that they will be sustainable. We know that sustainability is not coming easily or quickly, but still there must be some pathway that something is driving this partnership beyond the possibility of getting funding. Shared interest, previous engagement, it's not a formal requirement, but it's obviously easier to make a credible partnership with the characteristics we are asking for if you have already collaborated. But I would say sometimes a surprising number of applications did not combine the partnership component with the scholarship component. So some kind of said, well, this is a scholarship program, so we will apply for a lot of scholarships and we will have a fine management set up to manage the students. And that's not good enough. You need to do both. Now, you can ask for, if you already have a partnership, ongoing, flourishing, been there for many years or whatever, then you can apply for scholarships. But then you have to describe that you already have a partnership and therefore do not want to apply for one more. So you have to describe how it works, how well it works, and see why is it relevant, why is it giving effects, as if it was a new partnership. So this was a common trait, and in a sense, for seed funding applications, we apply the same criteria because these are standard project assessment criteria. But of course, we are not putting in the same demands. But some of them were clearly based on very, you can say, no, I would rather say the equity aspect. It's difficult because we want equal partnerships where it's very visible that all partners, all primary partners have contributed to the development of the proposal. But of course, if it's a seed funding proposal, reality is often that it's written behind one desk. Even if we say, well, you have to be in contact, you have to discuss, when is this early phase where you actually get money to have time and concentration and focus to discuss with your coming partners to make a full application. It's obviously a bit difficult, and some of the applications where we will kind of say, okay, has this really been discussed with the partner? It was typical a Danish researcher interested in moving towards a partnership application, phrasing the proposal, and it was not that we rejected them solely on that for that reason, but I would strongly recommend that you use technology such as Zoom, if you are in a place where you have good internet connections, to have a thorough discussion with your prospective partners about the seed funding. Because otherwise, again, it would we would kind of say, okay, no, this is still too speculative. We are not sure this will lead to a good application. And remember, the seed funding is actually there to ensure we get a great application in the next round.
Thank you very much, Nils. And I might add that there is, as Charlotte also mentioned before, a specific section of the partnership application this year that asks you to describe existing partnership activities or previous collaboration with the involved partner institutions or people. So it is definitely something that you will hopefully also be guided to in the application format. Definitely worth. And if you want to expand, Nils?
Yeah, just to add on where you should be careful and pay attention. And I'm of course saying that this was also an issue last year. It is to be fairly specific on impact and outcomes. It's not enough to say we will develop cooperation on sharing a global challenge on food security. You have to be more specific to make us understand what will come out of this in, and now I say tangible terms. So of course we do not expect you to put exact numbers of so and so many startups will participate in so and so many innovation camps to develop so and so many collaborative partnerships between a university and the private sector in this country. but still, we need to grasp that this will reach or have effect outside the universities. And that's sometimes, I must say in my experience, also working with other university programs, that is not always the easiest part to think beyond teaching and researching, but thinking in the outcomes of teaching and research, whether it's skills with students or whether it's impact with society or community or business, governments, whatever. But think that well through, because if we can't really see that this will lead to anything but things within the pond, then we would be likely to give it a low score.
Thank you very much, Nils. And as Nils also mentioned in the beginning of his own presentation, you will find who the selection committee members are on the Danida Fellowship Center website, so you can see who your target group is, so to speak, who are you writing to. And one thing we always, across our programs, suggest is to have a colleague or someone outside your own field read through your application before you submit it, so that you know that someone who might not be as ingrained in your own specific field of whether it is research or something else, that it is kind of broadly and easily accessible to different audiences. Thank you very much, Nils. I have a few questions for Charlotte that are related to the scholarship component of things. The first one is, how many master's students can be funded in a project, and which specific global themes is the call focusing on? Two questions in one.
Yeah. There is a budget limit to outcome 2 of 25 million DKK. So depending on the cost of the education that you want to provide the scholarship for, that is what determines how many students you can include. The cost of the university or the class, the topic is usually different from each Danish university. So it's not a one unit cost per student. So it depends on the faculty and the institute, on the subject, on the university. So we can't say so many master students or so many scholarships in general. So that depends. But what we can say is the limit to the budget for outcome 2 is 25 million DKK. There is no set specific global theme. That is what Nils was also saying, and what we were saying before is that the partnership defines the theme as a relevant shared global challenge that they want to address, and they want to see moving on in terms of development and innovative ideas, new ways of doing things, where the knowledge is shared between the universities. And you develop solutions, ideas, new methods together. But the theme is up to the project of what they have identified as a global challenge that they share between the Danish and the African universities involved. So we haven't preset those.
Thank you. Nils, do you have anything to add in terms of the theme? I see you raising your hand. Yeah, please.
Thank you. Yes, because that's obviously another thing we are looking carefully at. And I would say last year you had, in a sense, both extremes. Some themes were so specific, such a little corner of something, that it really more looked like a concrete development partnership or innovation partnership that would focus exactly on developing this or that aspect of something bigger. And there we were a bit hesitant because we want to see partnerships that are a bit broader in scope than, so to speak, just involve very few specialists in a very specialized area. But mind you, I'm not putting any specific limits. That's up to you. And I'm not talking about which subjects. On the other hand, we also had some partnerships that framed themselves in terms of global challenges that were so broad that it was kind of say, okay, yes, this is an unjust world. There are many issues, but if you really want to address all of these issues, if this is your focus, we kind of can't see the focus. So in this terms of how specific, how generic, find a balance where it makes sense for people like me and my colleagues, that we grasp that this will end up with a level of specificity that is suitable for a university partnerships and suitable for the kind of skill sets which nowadays have to be very flexible and adaptive as the world is, that is adequate. So you don't fall into a too small hole, and you don't create a partnership that will solve all the problems of the world. Well, if you can, then please do, but
That'd be wonderful. Thank you very much. Charlotte, I want to go back to you because there was another question related specifically to the scholarship component as a follow-up to the first one, and that is there any limit or guideline on the amount of funding per student within these scholarships? And again, a double question in 2 in 1. Is the KIP project involved in the disbursement of the scholarship?
Yes, so there's no limit as such on the scholarship. Like I was saying before, there's a cap on how much you can apply for under the outcome that relates to the scholarship. But the cost of the scholarship depends on the university, on the subject, on the course, etc. Like I said before. Then, of course, there are some guidance towards how much is the allowances and things like that. And there are some annexes to the call and to our general conditions, which will sort of outline what kind of costs are expected to be involved. So you can read about this both in the annexes to the call and in the general conditions in terms of what can be covered and what are the guidances on allowances and rent, depending on where in Denmark the students will be living. The scholarships are handled by the grant holders of the project. So that means if it's the University of Copenhagen, the University of Aarhus, the University of Southern Denmark, or the Danish Technical University, they are the ones where the scholarships are involved, then they are the ones handling the disbursement of the scholarship. It is possible for the Danish primary partners to buy some services from DFC so that DFC is supporting them in the elements of getting the students to Denmark, finding housing, etc. This is also described in their call and in the general conditions, and there will be a separate contract on this, but that is an agreement that is made between the grant holding primary partner and DFC in terms of how much support they are interested in purchasing from us as an institution. But overall, once the grant is awarded, the grant holding university is the one who's responsible for the finances of the project. And that means in terms of monitoring, following up, linking distribution of funds, making the payments to the primary partners, the other primary partners in the project. So the KIP program and the DFC is not involved as such in the program. We are the facilitator between the grant and the grant holding institution in terms of gathering, reporting, and these elements, but we are not involved in the distribution of the funds between the partners. I think that covers both questions.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. We are getting close to the end. I have one last 2-in-1 questions, which maybe Hristina, you can help me out with. And that is partly can the project coordinator or lead university be an African institution, the head applicant be African? And also, is it possible to link up with an African research partner like CSIR? I don't honestly remember exactly what that abbreviation stands for, but research or think tanks or research institutions which are not universities.
Yes. So the grant holding institution, which here is called like the leading partner university, it can only be a Danish university. So very short answer to this is no. About the think tanks, yes, they can be again involved in the project, included in the project as a secondary partner. So very short, I guess that it covered.
Thank you very much. And I just saw someone help me out with the abbreviation Council for Scientific Industrial Research, the CSIR. Thank you very much, which would fall under the category as secondary partner. Lastly, there are a few general questions which I will just briefly respond to, which is whether the presentations from today will be available or distributed to participants. We may be able to send out the presentation to people who have signed up to this meeting, but everything that has been included in this presentation is taken from the call text, and we very much urge you to visit our website and read the full call text, and also go to the SurveyMonkey Apply system and have a look around in the application formats. Because this system is important for you to be familiar with when applying, and also if you are given a grant, it will also be where you will be reporting throughout your project cycle. And this recording is distributed. We luckily have a very nice communications department who hopefully will be able to make it into a watch-worthy video where you can easily find the different topics that you are looking for, and we'll post it on the DFC website as soon as possible, but it will not be tomorrow, and Thursday is a public holiday in Denmark, so expect a little bit of time to pass, but it will be available online. And then there is a question: is there a means to know or have a list of universities or professors who are interested in this call for easy connection? And unfortunately, we do not have such a list. We don't have anywhere where Danish universities or university researchers or admin staff kind of show their interest in this program. The Danish Ministry for Higher Education and Research do have a full list of universities in Denmark that you can find rather easily online, and the Danish universities generally have websites that should be fairly easy to navigate, so that you will be able to find, based on topic, someone who might be a relevant partner to you that you could approach and ask about this. But it is not possible for us to facilitate this contact, unfortunately, at this point in time. Overall, to wrap up, we highly encourage you to read the call text, and also visit our general conditions in the process of applying, so that you know what to expect down the line if you are given a grant through the Knowledge and Innovation Program. And all of this is found on the Danida Fellowship Center website. I believe my colleague just posted a link in the chat as well. And as I said previously, we always welcome your questions on email. So you can always email the KIP Knowledge and Innovation Program team at DFC via kip@dfcenter.dk. I think this is all for today, and I would very much like to thank all our presenters for sharing the different aspects of the call and the application process and selection process, not least. And we wish you all the best of luck in your applications for the various modalities in the Knowledge and Innovation Program. We look very much forward to receiving your applications and reading them. Would you like to wrap up, Kaspar? Do you have anything to add to this, or can we?
No, let me just repeat a few messages. Thank you so much, Ida, and to all the other presenters today. Thank you for all the questions in the chat. I think we have covered most of it, and in the case that you feel a topic was not fully addressed, as Ida said, please feel free to reach out, and we'll do our utmost to get into more details. Otherwise, also strongly encourage you to visit the website and collect whatever information you need from there. So thank you to all, and wishing you all a pleasant day.